what are some of the cautionary tales? Also, you mentioned, you know, when you aren't as prepared or your VDR, and I'm just referencing VDRs because it's so land centric for us. It's an important part of what we do. We see very, very often where, this PSA is drafted, everything's good. And they said, all right, go, we got 30 days. And it takes 14 days for us to get access to the files. Um, and time and time again, the PSA has no repercussions there, right? We still have to close in, 30 days. What are some of the things that you see that you try to account for from a land due diligence standpoint in your negotiation support?
Yeah, almost all the sophisticated PSAs that you're going to see are going to provide the buyer with access and, remotely unfettered access to the records, maybe during reasonable business hours. And oftentimes today it's electronically. So you can kind of, gauge the seller's ability to provide information as you're, up until signing, because you're going to ask some questions. You're going to see the material contract schedule and say, hey, I need to know more about that. And if they are not organized or, forthcoming or anything like that, I think that you can kind of get an idea of what you might expect, and maybe you can beef up the provisions.
Mm-hmm.
But there are cooperation covenants, and honestly, we don't, we see issues from time to time, but, the land teams usually have a pretty good idea of what they're getting into by the time you sign a document. At least as far as like what they think the seller will be able to provide versus not. So
Yeah.
some of that is just kind of a gut feeling going in. And, we've had clients ask us to do, put in provisions that are a little bit more stringent, whenever they don't have as good a feeling about it.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately where a lot of that goes is to price, because they're going to say, look, if I'm going to have trouble really diligencing this asset, I'm going to build in a discount.
Yeah, there's a discount associated with that.
Yeah, it didn't really help the seller to do that.
Yeah. We see it pretty often. I think there's a little gamesmanship there at times, complicated assets. You'll get your files and you'll get your exhibits and your schedules. And it's like, you got to spend a week trying to crack the code, how to reference leases to wells and all the things. So that's always, we always really push to try to get as early of access as possible, because it just there's an organizational period there to figuring out how things are structured, figuring out how to find your well files and your lease files and tying all that together based on how your, if your value is on a DSU basis or on a well basis or on a lease basis, as a part of your deal. So we always push to try to get as much access as we can. And hopefully the PSA negotiations are such that it gives our clients some support to either extend the period or, they're getting a discount for having to deal with such a damn mess.
Sure. One other point, obviously the engineers and the finance team should be working on allocating value before you even sign the PSA. And, we're not involved, we, on the law side, we're just waiting for, the allocated value schedule to come over. In a lot of deals, you'll see things come to a pause when value has been allocated in a way that indicates they've been working very closely with the land team to say, here's where we know the defects are. And we're going to put all the value there.
Yeah.
And then the whole deal just says, hold on, like, this isn't really where you think all the value.
$20 million wealth.
Right. But we know this is why, because you want to defect this. And, and then, there's a discussion amongst the principals at that point.